Lockbox, The Conversion of Sara Channing by Larry Johnson. Copyright 2025. Published by Eon Century Company, Incorporated. Read by the author, Larry Johnson. Chapter 1. A child should outlive her parents is what ancient wisdom would say. So why did Sara feel so adrift now? Why did the early dawn of another Sunday feel like such a bleak, eternal tomb on this morning when Sara looked on her mother's lifeless body for the last time? Her mother's name was Jasmine. She lay in her casket from a cause of death no one in the medical field could explain. The light of life went out in Jasmine Channing's dark eyes in a mysterious way. For most people, the day of death can be unimaginable, its appearance unanticipated. For Sara, it was no different. She might have imagined various ways for her mother to die, as dreadful as that morbid contemplation might have been. This avenue to the realm of the dead did not even register in the top 10. Sara's mother was Asian American. Jasmine immigrated from Japan and gave birth to Sara in Louisville, Colorado, on a different early dawn, 18 years earlier. It was the beginning of a life for Sara that she would never have dreamed. On this early Sunday morning, while it was still dark outside, the landscape seemed as lonely as Sara's inner being. Sara was standing on Route 93 in view of the Colorado Flatirons, halfway between Golden and Boulder, Colorado. She had driven her unusually green Volvo that far until overcome with tears, until she could no longer trust the grip of her hands on the steering wheel. She pulled over to the side of the road and climbed out. Her white blouse was ruffled at the buttons, and her full flowing cream skirt danced in the breeze like sad laughter. It was the traditional Japanese morning dress, and Sara wore the combination in honor of her mother. The nausea of grief now had full license in her gut, so that Sara spilled pain onto the ground from her innards. She coughed and cried until she felt as though she would pass out. Jasmine Channing had passed away and was being cremated that very hour. Her mother, her only parent. She had no brothers, no sisters to comfort her in this sorrow. The reality of that furnace raging against her mother's flesh and bone, eliminating her forever from memory, ripped great tracts of tears from Sara's soul down her dove-white face. Hardly an hour had gone by since Sara left the crematorium. The funeral, as it was, had been painful and lonely. Sara engaged in the wake alone, watching her mother lying in the casket. Sara never sat down. No eulogy was given. Sara stared at her mother lying there, a lifeless frame of a once vibrant humanity. Sara whispered a few words. "We could barely afford the cremation, Mother. I'm so glad you put the money away for it. I know how hard it must have been for you to stash away anything. I would have been at such a loss to know what to do." It felt strange staring down at the lifeless body of her mother. How could such a thing ever feel normal? That physical frame once animated with energy, emotion, and intelligence. Now its stillness seemed like a mockery of life. Sara endured the irony. Should it not be clear death always trumped life? Birth is the promise of death, or so it seemed to Sara. However, for some strange reason, Sara abhorred death's intrusion and its inexplicable power to make Sara truly alone in the world. Was life really that much of a phantom? Sara had met who her mother claimed was her father only once, 6 years earlier. Her mother was Japan born. She was vacationing in Hong Kong, where she met Sara's African American father. His name was Fred Channing. He was in Hong Kong on military tour. Jasmine and Fred fell for each other instantly. The courtship was tempestuous. Opposition in Jasmine's family was intense. The two persevered in their passionate love. With the acquiescence of Fred's military chaplain, the two married. Not long after that, Sarah was conceived. Soon, Fred returned to America. After some tearful farewells to her parents, the young pregnant Jasmine also migrated to America. She gave birth to Sarah in the Adventist Hospital in Louisville, Colorado. Jasmine made it very clear to Sarah why she left for America as soon as the pregnancy was confirmed. I wanted you to be born in America because after China's One Nation, Two Systems pledge came to nothing in Hong Kong, I knew I wanted to be in America. Sarah's meeting with her father at age 12 lasted all of 30 minutes. If the man truly had been her father, Sarah never cared beyond that half hour. The man said nothing of importance, and afterward she never saw him again. That was 6 years ago. Since then, she had discovered he had passed away from cancer, another victim of the cruel hoax that claimed to be life. Death, not life, for Sarah was reality. Today, she couldn't tell you what the man looked like who was her father. Looking down at her mother, she wondered if the day would come when any image of her, too, would be but a cognitive memory without substance. If her father's absence had an impact on Sarah at all, she couldn't tell anyone what it might be. She would only admit to despising the man's cowardice, his failure to take responsibility. When it came to Jasmine, however, the situation was entirely different. Sarah wondered how she would get on without the loving presence of her mother's charm. Sarah stood on the side of the road staring at Rocky Mountain foothills. They looked to her like something eerie, ghostly, unreal. Sarah's tears had begun to dry for the moment, but a sense of non existence remained. She felt as though she could pass through those flatirons like a spook through walls. The only daughter of a single mother, she could disappear and no one would care. Being unmoored, the idea of simply losing her materiality and fading away had a certain attraction. What had she to live for now? The life she had shared with Jasmine has been, however erratic and unpredictable, filled with adventure and laughter, even though it had been their lot to fluctuate between poverty and limited plenty. Sarah dropped out of high school at 16. Jasmine had not complained, for she had done the same in her early terrestrial years. As for possessions, her mother left three things to Sarah: the green Volvo, the small trailer house in the small town of Lafayette, Colorado, and a lockbox. The last bequest was strange indeed and completely surprised Sarah. The gifted lockbox had a suede exterior made with designs of yin and yang on it, mixed with colors of purple and white. A silver key accompanied the lockbox. Sarah had not known about the lockbox or the key. She had never seen either before. She was surprised when her mother's priest, Father Seraphim, handed the key to her the moment he had stepped out of the funeral home. He looked very pained, as if guilt riddled him. Father Seraphim came into Jasmine's life just before her death. It had been barely a year since Jasmine obtained the newfound faith which changed her in Sarah's eyes. Father Seraphim had been there from the beginning, guiding Jasmine. Sarah blamed the priest for this alteration in Jasmine's lifestyle. When her mother tried to get Sarah to join her on Sundays at liturgy, Sarah resisted. The sandy haired Father Seraphim made no effort to convert Sarah to her mother's belief. Sarah's impression of the priest, in spite of the blame she heaped on him, was of a kindly man, highly intellectual and trustworthy. In Sarah's grief, Father Seraphim struck her as a man suffering from guilt. He at once apologized for not being present to give Jasmine her last rites. Your mother swore me to secrecy, he said as he handed over the silver key. She insisted I not give you the key until after her cremation. He sheepishly grimaced. I guess this is not too soon after. All the formalities are done, right? I have no idea what's in the lockbox. I only know about the key. At first, Sarah thought she could despise Father Seraphim for leading her mother to the Christian faith. It had so altered the course of their relationship. Furthermore, it didn't help her feelings about Christianity that Jasmine's life quickly came to an end thereafter. How could conversion have done her mother any good? Having a priest around might have given someone comfort during their mourning period. Sara wasn't one of these people. Nevertheless, the priest was here, acting on Jasmine's wishes. He had to be respected for his obedience to her mother's last wishes. Sara forced herself to smile. It's okay. It's fine, Father. Thank you. Driving home, back to Lafayette, she kept glancing over at the lockbox silver key nestled in the car's cup holder. That key seemed to magnify everything Sara didn't know about her mother. An eagerness tickled Sara's curiosity to quickly open that lockbox. But it was Sunday, the Lord's Day, and this day mattered to her mother. Irrationally so, thought Sara. What used to be their mother daughter day had become the Lord's Day. Sara could still be with her mother, but on Sunday her mother felt more like another's Jasmine than Sara's. Jasmine belonged to Jesus on Sunday in a way that was different than any other day. This regret gnawed at Sara as she drove home after her mother's cremation service concluded. The life her mother lived after she converted had become distant from Sara's. It held a do not disturb sign up at her. It angered her, but also made her feel unworthy. As she neared Lafayette, she promptly decided if her mother had lived a life unknown to Sara, then the daughter would resist the temptation to peer into her mother's mystery lockbox gift. Resentment played a role in this decision. Sara knew it. She was piqued and didn't care. The trailer that Sara shared with her mother was located off Public Road in Lafayette. It was an average size rectangular trailer, white, with a small garden out front. Somehow, during one of the few days of plenty, Jasmine had managed to make it through a rent to own arrangement to finalize purchase of the two-bedroom trailer. There, Sara lived what she felt was a blissful life with her mother, just she and Jasmine. Neither one of them ever thought of themselves as deprived. Poverty did not shape their mentality. Jasmine would not tolerate such an attitude. Life, whatever gifts it bestowed on them, was lived with full joy. This part of Jasmine had not changed after her conversion to Christianity, and Sara was relieved this part of her mother remained. Her mother's added element of faith in things unseen, this is what felt to Sara like an intrusion in their paradise. Sara pulled into the parking spot next to the white picket fence in the garden, climbed out of her Volvo, and entered her home. The trailer and its mortgage payment were now hers. Once inside the trailer, the home felt dark and cluttered. The black couch, which once seemed to have some flair, now looked particularly devious and dark. The black leather had no attraction to it anymore. The big screen TV now felt extravagant, like a big yawning lie. The trailer home hadn't been fully cleaned since Jasmine began her inexplicable physical decline. Sarah now could see all the dark stains on the blue walls and all the clothing strewn over the square footage, the couch, and the floor. The cluttered coffee table sat prominently in the center of the living room. The black lazy chair sat on one side, empty of her mother's usual presence. Just seeing the emptiness there squeezed tears out of Sarah's eyes. She tried to make sense of the clutter, to black out the new vacancy in her home. Sarah had two choices: keep her mind on the clutter and remember how little of their lifestyle during her mother's decline involved order and organization, or she can focus on the human loss, the loss of physical sight of her mother. No more would Sarah experience Jasmine's gentle physical touch or her mother's high-pitched Asian accent. Lost, all gone, forever. Sarah chose to focus on the disorder and disorganization. The kitchen fared no better. The yellow paint on its walls long ago faded into a stale remembrance of its brightness, and the part around the stove was heavily stained from grime and grease. Unwashed pots, dishes, and utensils filled the sink. All the shades in the home were drawn, giving the entire interior an eerie darkness among the unkept chaos. Yes, this is where Sarah settled her thoughts. On the broken pieces, the promises scattered to the invisible winds, the black rug in the hallway which had not been vacuumed in weeks. In death, there was retreat into chaos. a kind of shield in the haphazardness of everything, everywhere. There, insanely, Sarah sought protection from her broken heart, from the truth that she went from being an only child to being only her. This attempt to retreat behind the narrative of the clutter could not block out everything of her mother. Even as Sarah looked around the home, seeing the Darwinian environment in which she and her mother lived the last few weeks, she could still hear her mother's high pitched laughter with its Japanese accent. The mysterious sudden sickness which slowly took Jasmine's life piece by piece had snuffed out that joy. Sarah recalled her mother had somehow managed to keep the joy even as her body slowly weakened and seemed to fade as if it wanted to dematerialize. Jasmine's decline, the doctors told Sarah, involved a surprisingly high dose of radiation. They surmised sunlight was the culprit. We have our best researchers on it. All the doctors could do was promise Sarah. We've never seen someone be deconstructed like this. Her flesh gets paler and thinner, but we can't tell what's causing it. Cancer would devour someone from the inside, true, they declared, but Jasmine was simply going away. We are stumped at the moment, and they declared, keep her away from the sunlight. This seeming reality was crazy. Simply going away? The sunlight was the enemy of her mother's existence? Keeping Jasmine indoors would prove impossible. Jasmine loved being in the sun in her little garden, constantly attending her flowers. Sarah loved that about her mother. She was a woman of the day, and she lived every hour of the day's light, soaking up all its outdoor power. Jasmine did not go mountain climbing, nor engage in any of the more strenuous exercise many Coloradans had a reputation for enjoying, like skiing or water rafting. Rather, Jasmine enjoyed being outside in her garden, or at a coffee shop, or sitting by the Boulder Creek, or playing tennis, or photographing the outdoor activity of others. As a fervent people watcher, Jasmine mastered the art of photography. From these, among many other calm adventures, Sarah knew her mother gained the ultimate pleasure of being a living soul. All of that changed 3 weeks ago when her mother came home looking like a ghost. That experience haunted Sarah. Her mother struggled into the threshold of the trailer, then collapsed on the floor, clutching at her skin like some invisible force was attacking her, mumbling scripture verses Sarah had no capacity to comprehend. Jasmine's eyes seemed to flash white, then back to their dark nature, then brilliantly white again. Sarah had no one to understand what she saw. She helped Jasmine to her bed at the end of the trailer hall, and as Sarah aided Jasmine to her bed, there were moments when her mother didn't even feel like she was in Sarah's arms at all. The ghostly memory had no rival. The doctors had diagnosed an impossible diagnosis. It was as if Jasmine was simply going away. How could going away be a medical diagnosis? It sounded more like voodoo to Sarah. Lockbox. Chapter 2. How long Sarah sat, with all the curtains pulled shut in her darkened living room, she only realized when Rhonda came knocking. Had it been hours, days, weeks? Sarah's best friend, Rhonda, had a strong Puerto Rican flair, the daughter of her mother who left the island for New York for a better life, eventually migrated to Colorado. Rhonda had long, blondish brown hair below the shoulders, brown eyes, and a tan youth skin. Her full lips betrayed her mixed roots, European, African, Indian, all the mixtures of the little island, and they accented her beautiful oval face. The sound of her English speaking voice had that hint of Spanish that was sweet and melodious. Sarah loved comparing Rhonda to the fictional character Anita in West Side Story. My God, girl, Rhonda said, after Sarah finally answered the door. It's been 3 days. Sarah held the door open, her mind still miles away. You don't say. I'm surprised I answered the door at all. She wandered back over to her couch. Rhonda followed her through the darkened home into the living room. I have a distinctive knock. That you do, replied Sarah absent-mindedly. She walked back into the interior, Rhonda following behind her. Sarah sat on the couch, and Rhonda sat next to her, putting her hand on Sarah's thigh. Mira, this Puerto Riqueña thinks it's time to stop being gloomy. After a silent pause, she stood up and pulled open the living room curtains. Shielding her eyes, Sarah demurred. 3 days is not that long to mourn my mother's passing. Sí, admitted Rhonda. Tal vez no. She came back to the couch, sat next to her friend again, and put her arm around Sarah's shoulder. Pero I worry about you. Sarah sighed deeply. I feel you, said Rhonda. It's really tough imagining a life without Mom. Rhonda listened silently. She left me this key. Sarah held it up. It belongs to a lockbox. Father Seraphim gave the key to me on the day of the funeral. I never knew about such a lockbox. Rhonda looked on with curiosity. So your mother lived a secret, double life, see? Sarah grimaced. Why would you put it that way? Well, those types of things, secret lockboxes, usually mean a secret life. It doesn't have to be a bad thing, just something the person was unwilling to share while living. Incredulous, Sarah said. I find that hard to believe about Mom. She paused for a moment, realizing Jasmine had succumbed to a mysterious sunlight radiation sickness. At least, that is all the doctors could surmise. Mom had always been so generous in sharing her life with me. The idea that she stopped sharing her life with me is hard to accept. It would be very weird. A long silence settled between Sarah and Rhonda. Sarah twirled the lockbox key in her hand. Finally, Rhonda rose. I need to get back. It's my turn to babysit my bratty brother. Be glad you are an only child. She paused. Don't be so quick to think the key and the lockbox are evil things. A secret life could be something your mom really needed to be the mother you remember. Without a verbal response, Sarah watched Rhonda depart. No, she thought, the lockbox secret fell out of character for her mother. Such a secret would be foreign even for the mother who became Jasmine after her conversion to the faith, which for the first time put a wedge between herself and her mom. Jasmine had sought to share her faith with Sarah. Sarah didn't want to focus on that regret right now. There had to be another explanation for the lockbox. No doubt, she might find clues in the lockbox. She could open it and discover what she needed to know. She lifted up the silver lockbox key, twirling it between the fingers of her petite hands. Lockbox, Chapter 3. The memory of Father Seraphim giving her the lockbox key awoke Sarah from sleep. He had also told her, everything is easily accessible. Here is the key. The lockbox you will find hidden in the flower pot in the living room, where the rather large tree Jasmine cultivated with purple flowers is. Jasmine did have a sense of humor. After Sarah had dug the lockbox out of the flower pot, she couldn't help but laugh. She saw the purple lockbox had a couple of Pooh Bear stickers on either end. She recognized the motif as from the film episode Blustery Day. Her mother loved the episode for some reason, and it became a recurring theme, a running joke in their home. Life is like a blustery day, joked Jasmine often. Sara even had Pooh Bear posters in her room, which she put up in honor of her mother's love of the character. The humor of this memory aside, there remained many painful inquisitions in Sara's mind. Whatever you meant by leaving this lockbox to me, Mother, I so need you to rest in peace now. I need peace. You left me so quickly, I can't handle it. Radiation and sunlight killed Jasmine Channing. That is the explanation the doctors gave to Sara. It was an incredible piece of guesswork, even if they admitted it. How do you explain a physical being simply going away? Going away. Deconstructing, dematerializing to death had no empirical meaning. Nevertheless, this is what Sara had, for a reason. She had to take it, explore what it meant, because this mysterious killer took her mother away. If true, from where did Jasmine get the heavy dose of so-called radiation? To add to the mystery, Jasmine had left her daughter a silver key to a secret lockbox. Night quickly turned to day after Rhonda departed, and Sarah was sitting at the kitchen table having a bowl of cereal. The silver key lay on the table in front of her, bidding her to take the plunge into discovering the answers to her dilemma. But what would happen if she opened the lockbox and it only deepened the hidden questions of Jasmine's life? Sarah couldn't bear any more contradictions to what she thought she knew about her mother. Therefore, she felt no compulsion to make use of the key, although she felt a strong need to keep the key near and visible at the moment. The silver sign promised her answers at some point, but for now, Sarah rejected her impulse to pry into the cauldron of uncertainty. She felt strongly a desire to avoid discovering anything shockingly new and different about her mother's life. She would follow the fears empowering her reluctance. 2 more days passed. It was now 12 days beyond Jasmine's cremation. Moment by moment, the demands of the living reasserted themselves. The sound of traffic outside her windows, the changing moods of Colorado's fall weather from cold to warm, the hints of winter frost in the trailer garden needed Sarah to get up from bed, where she lay for long hours after waking from sleep. The gloom and pain which kept her supine in bed still lingered. She still felt deprived of her mother's advice and comfort in the present. But Sarah had to get up. She had a job to attend to, a mortgage her mother left her to pay, a heating bill, food to buy in order to survive, all the things which made for the kinetic realities of the living. Her mother would definitely be joyfully yelling at Sarah after so many days to rise, get to work, you are alive, live. Sarah heard all these commands in her prostrated soul. So she focused on the precious, positive memories of her mother. She resolved to keep those memories pristine. The key to the lockbox Sarah took as a threat to those pristine memories, and she grew determined to resist her curiosity. She rose from her bed, jumped into the shower, and decided to join the living again. With her decision made, Sarah returned to work the next day. It had been 2 days short of 2 weeks since Jasmine's cremation. Sarah's cashier job had been a supplement to what her mother brought in from her photography gigs. Now Sarah realized she would need to earn much more. She would already miss a paycheck from this work cycle. She couldn't afford to miss any more. Nice to have you back, the white-haired older Katie, her immediate supervisor, said. My condolences on Jasmine's passing. Thank you, Sarah returned. She paused thoughtfully. I've been thinking. I'm going to need more hours. I've worked here 3 years now, and I've never really asked for anything. With Mom gone, my job just can't be a supplement to her income. It must carry the entire show for me now. Katie smiled. We have been thinking about that very thing. The general manager, Mr. Donaldson, is offering you a raise and a new position as assistant manager. OMG, responded Sarah. That would be so awesome. Katie laughed. Okay, okay, but do you mind doing your old responsibilities for one more day? Things have moved so fast. I need time to prepare everyone. And Mr. Thompson wants to speak with you first. Unable to contain her joy and relief, Sarah slapped Katie on the shoulder playfully. She turned to the cash register. I hope I prove worthy of such a trust. I'm sure I will. Katie smiled. You already are. All day, her cash register buzzed with activity, and Sarah hardly noticed the pace. Just the act of being active again relieved her of so many unwelcome dark thoughts. Everyone was cheerfully careful talking to her today. Old customers provided the customary condolences and spoke of Jasmine happily, but not too much. A simple blessing, a brief comment of prayer, a firm handshake and word of inspiration. These are the humanities Sarah received at work. For the first time in 2 weeks, her mind filled with new possibilities. The future had a new invitation for her. She could see something bright again for herself and not just as a memory. Yes, she would need to think anew and now earn her own way. Yes, she had to journey solo now. Nevertheless, with the prospect of her new supervisor responsibilities and higher pay came previously unexpected chance she could overcome her new challenges in life. She had dreamed of traveling to distant places like Japan, Rome, Washington, D.C. Now she might be able to earn enough to both take care of her obligations and make bucket list wishes come true. Japan, especially, loomed large in her imagination. After all, she was Asian American of Japanese heritage. It felt like it was time to visit her mother's homeland and distant relatives. As the day ended, Sarah felt great satisfaction. Many well-wishers had stopped by. Mr. Donaldson, with his round, weighty frame and clownish ruby cheeks, had also stopped by, inviting her to his office to discuss the assistant manager position. Tomorrow, then, he said. Lockbox, Chapter 4. Rhonda was not impressed. You're going to meet with Mr. Donaldson, are you? Her brown eyes digging into Sarah. She had an incredulous twist on her full, red-painted lips, a Spanish accent dripping with rebuke. Of course, why not? Sarah shot back, somewhat shocked by her friend's strong distaste. I need the raise the assistant manager position would give me, responded Sarah. It was a bright sunny day in the usual Colorado fashion, with an expansive blue sky and warm, comfortable fall dry air. The two friends were enjoying lunch on Naropa grounds. Many who worked and lived in Boulder loved to have lunch on the high hill overlooking the city and university. Naropa was a weather research observation post with a tall, conspicuous sandy-walled building that made it a unique, identifiable landmark, visible from any place in the Chautauqua Park below it. The park was a historic national landscape, spread out over 4 acres of open green space. A wide variety of family-friendly events took place in the park. It sported 40 miles of hiking trails, a Chautauqua concert hall where folk, rock, and pop music entertained tourists and locals alike. All agreed the views in the Chautauqua Park District was unbeatable and there was plenty of space to run, throw a frisbee, and spread out a blanket, or gather family and friends at the picnic table. From the hill on which the weather station stood, just in front of the Flatiron stretching east and west, one could look down on Boulder City spread out below it. Sara and Rhonda often met there during their breaks. Yes, I know you need the money, agreed Rhonda. But can't you video conference with Mr. Donaldson? What? Sara once again stared at Rhonda in stunned disbelief. Sara had never been a gullible person. Rhonda knew this, but for some reason she had a deep distrust of Mr. Donaldson, their boss and store owner. Sara had a strong personality, one very much incapable of believing silly stories. Sara needed to have precise, solid evidence to back up every assertion. She despised gossip. That attitude of having to see it, to believe it, to handle it, to test every angle of it, often left Sara without many friends, on top of which she had an inwardly drawn persona. It would be a mistake to call her shy, but if one didn't know Sara, you had indubitably met someone with whom it was supremely difficult to maintain a frivolous conversation. Unlike her mother, Sara's Japanese accent had all but disappeared, though a hint of it could be traced with the ear when you experienced that rare flash of annoyance from her. Despite her mixed look and the unmistakable foreign look, a native Japanese might think she didn't speak Japanese at all, which would be a big mistake, for she knew her mother's language very well, and she could read with ease beyond 5,000 Japanese characters. At the same time, born and raised in America, Sarah sounded like someone who had grown up in the Midwest on an American farm. She didn't speak in urbanisms. Her language was clean and crisp, completely understandable to any American ear. You would never notice Sarah was a first generation American. Why are you acting like this? She demanded of her friend. You know I hate listening to wild gossip. Rhonda was sitting next to Sarah on the grass. If Sarah was the shy one, Rhonda had grown to become the life of the party. It had not always been that way, and she kept to herself much of her story. Rhonda lived on the surface level and could get along with anyone. She also had the tendency to judge quickly. She lived secretly, and she delved into anyone else's secrets. In contradiction to this flaw in Rhonda that astonishingly attracted Sarah, Rhonda was a devout Christian. That too she kept to herself. It had not always been the case that Rhonda would try to live a pious life. Along the rocky pavement of life, she had undergone many changes until she met Sarah. Rhonda knew Sarah's atheist bent, not that Sarah espoused atheism. They never had philosophical conversations around the topic. Instead, their friendship was a pragmatically guided one. They felt comfortable with each other almost immediately when they began working together at Little Town Grocery. And this sense of soul compatibility allowed a certain level of honesty that coming from anyone else might lead to a breakup of interpersonal communication. What Mr. Donaldson offers is not free. Sarah shook her head. What is the basis for this fear, Rhonda? She shook her head again and took a bite out of her turkey sandwich. There are stories, responded Rhonda. I think it's best to act with caution. There are stories. What? Donaldson has been our boss for 3 years. Is this your inner detective coming out? Maybe. Rhonda took a drink out of her cola can. I need the money. You know how I feel about gossip, countered Sarah. Rhonda insisted. All the same, I hope your quest for Donaldson's financial promise doesn't cloud your judgment. Sure, he is our boss, but if you ignore every hint there might be issues, you could get hurt. I am hoping to spare you making a mistake. Sarah ran her hand through her black, long hair and stared down at the city for a few seconds. Come back to me when you have something concrete to warn of, Rhonda. You know me. What is it am I supposed to fear? Feeling sheepish, Rhonda replied, well, things. Anyway, since I can't give you anything concrete for now, I will keep it to myself. My caution warning stands, though. Laughing out loud, Sarah stood up. That suits me fine. Come on, girl. We work in a grocery store in a small, dinky town. Get real. We are around gangbangers all the time. I've escaped my share of octopuses. I can handle myself. I don't know. I've just heard that Mr. Donaldson is a member of a weird group. Be careful. Sarah scoffed. A weird group? Okay, I hear you. Regardless, the meeting is at the store in broad daylight. I will keep what your suspicious soul warns in mind. Rhonda stood up. Mira, we had better get back. I said what I needed to say. Lockbox, Chapter 5. Donaldson's office sat just outside the cashier's aisle, the interior of a little town grocery clearly visible through the large window that stretched from the store entrance down half the length of the front of the store. Sarah laughed at the thought of her conversation with Rhonda during lunch break. The idea of Donaldson being a member of a weird, dangerous group while he toiled away owning this middling grocery store was more than amusing as she walked in. She had banished all worries from her thoughts and imagination. There was nothing particularly attractive about Donaldson or his Spartan office. Two colors dominated the office, pale white and nondescript gray. There was a metal black cabinet and a couple of folding chairs. The walls and floors were dirty white. Nothing intimidating at all struck Sarah about Donaldson. A big man in height and weight, he had a hearty, childlike laugh, unobtrusive green eyes, and smiles absorbed by his big cheeks. Yet his looks were deceiving, for Donaldson was in the past an athletic man who was adventurous until a disease made him enlarge. The spirit of an archaeologist still lived in him, and when he was not busy with his store he dabbled in studying ancient languages. None of these traits gave Sarah any reason for concern. Indeed, Rhonda's worries so unbelievable that she had a hard time taking them serious. She had no problem gleefully laughing to herself privately about the rumors swirling around her boss. For his part, Donaldson openly admitted people around town believed there was a certain oddness to him. He took no offense whatever to the rumors. He simply laughed them off with the good humor of someone who knew contravening facts. Sarah's meeting with Donaldson went so well, she completely discarded the rumors and Rhonda's concerns. The new position turned out to be perfect. Essentially, she would be assistant manager to cashier associates in charge of their training. As day turned to night, and as Sarah returned home, to the unusual quiet of a home without her mother, the stillness had the power to trouble her. From time to time, as if from a deep involuntary sorrow, Sarah would burst into tears. The tears led to a melancholy wandering around the trailer home. In those moments when she wandered aimlessly around the house, she couldn't escape all the inexplicable happenings and the signs of personality change she witnessed in her mother. It didn't seem to Sarah that the change in her mother's demeanor had been abrupt. Instead, as she reflected and wandered from her room to her mother's room, walked in circles in the living room, she could feel her mother's changing presence. In between the involuntary tears of the torn soul and the reflective wandering, Sarah recalled a wording used by her mother that took on a new tone. Sarah's mother started to talk more in cautious tones. Be careful, and not worth the risk. Or more striking to Sarah, mother began using, which Sarah knew came from a new place. I have to prepare you for when I'm gone from this existence. The word existence burrowed itself deep in Sarah's remembrance and produced a heaviness which she believed must be the source of her random, cheery convulsions. Sarah didn't know why, but the word had a drawing power, turning her insides out. Rhonda told her this was to be expected, having just lost her mother in a rather unfathomable fashion. Yet Sarah still sensed beyond explanation, as if her mother was standing right beside her. In fact, In that very thought, she could feel a coldness in the home. A friendly cold, almost like it was a breath. The voice of Jasmine herself. Mom? Mom? She shook her head. No. Sara, you are losing your grip. Nevertheless, Sarah's intellect demanded she pay attention to her mother's changed vocabulary. No longer did conversation around gardening, photography, everyday necessities dominate their interactions. Instead, intangible realities pushed themselves forward between mother and daughter, wide and endless, stretching out called existence. Became an inexhaustible ocean to which mere gardening or physical pleasure had to be subordinate. Even their mother-daughter relationship had given way to this thing Jasmine called real life. The phrase tormented Sara because it had become so connected to her mother's decline. What did she mean, real life? Jasmine used phrases like this repeatedly, and by them she seemed to mean everything they now were experiencing in the seeing, the hearing, the touching. Life goes through mysterious stages of being, her mother kept warning Sara. Existence is a thin thread. What stage are you going through, Mom? Sara would ask. The worried memory of Sara's conversations with her mother forced itself out. Jasmine would only smile at the attempt of her daughter to carry the conversation deeper. One day Jasmine turned to her daughter, and with a demand in her voice which implanted fear in Sara, Jasmine blurted out, "Read the Gospel of John," completely out of character for their lives. Not in 16 years had Jasmine spoken of anything related to religion. Jasmine was the entire Bible, not just that written by that man she called John. Sara felt no compulsion back then to heed her mother. She saw it as creepy what her mother was going through. At some point, Sara remembered picking up the Gospel of John, thinking perhaps something in there would reveal why her mother had lost her senses and completely flipped about the meaning of life. As Jasmine lay for those final 3 weeks in what was essentially her deathbed about her life, Jasmine would share with Sara. Nothing else came for Jasmine's dying lips. Nevertheless, Sara remained incredulous. Now, with her mother's absence, wandering teary-eyed around the empty trailer home, Sara wondered if she would have taken her mother's queer turn more seriously. She felt this hurtful regret deeply. She entered her mother's now empty room again. The regret of what felt like disobedience to her dying mother's wish needled Sara. Nothing in the room had been disturbed since that final fateful night, when her mother, as the doctors put it, went away, growing thinner and thinner until she hardly had a voice, until she could barely reach out and touch Sara, until nothing. Sara looked down on the queen bed, lying still unmade, and the pillow still displayed the indenture of her mother's head. Sara pulled open the dresser drawer. There she had kept the lockbox and its key. It was right where she left it, undisturbed. She still had no desire to discover what part of that key would open to her. She reflected on the silver key as if it was a dangerous talisman. It promised to reveal truths about her mother. Sara had no certainty she wanted to discover. All those things Jasmine waited until her final year of life to share. Why didn't you share what's in this box long before the end, Mother? Sara spoke out loud as if hoping for an answer. No answer, of course, came. Whether things shared within this yin and yang, purple-white lockbox seemed good or bad, Sara didn't like the prospect of this kind of revelation. A good thing shared would make Sara feel cheated. She mother holding back on the best parts of herself, and what would be the reason for it? A will or a trust Sara could process. However, a lockbox with a silver key, a bad share, what would that mean? What opening the lockbox might reveal could revolutionize Sara's entire worldview of her mother. Never had Sara even kept a hint of anything negative toward her mother. Did she really want to discover such a flaw in her imagination of Jasmine now? No, not on my life, declared Sara. Sara had again made it up in her mind as she stood there, staring at the lockbox and pondering its potential portents. She would not open it. You are too out of character for Ma, she mumbled her thoughts. We were twins, she continued. We did everything together. How could you keep something so important from me until the end? It had to be important. Natural twins, we shared life, not just like mother and daughter. As soon as Sara emerged out of infancy and had gained the ability to verbally articulate her soul's needs with clarity, gone daughter differentiations. Instead, persuasion and mutual respect ruled and refined their relationship. It was how you wanted it, Mom. You loved the way we lived. Why did you change? Slowly, Sara closed the drawer, leaving the lockbox and its key there. If you had a passion, we shared it. If I had a passion, we shared it. And if you had a life I didn't know about, a hurt, a joy I didn't know about, I would be more than shocked. Sara talked herself into her resolution. She could hear her mother's voice in her head. There will be no secrets between you and I. Her mother kept saying over and over, no secrets. Sara knew Rhonda would question such an assertion. Rhonda would say everyone had secrets. Sara preferred to believe her mother's assertion, no secrets. The bequest of the lockbox had proven Rhonda correct. Jasmine did have secrets, and for now, Sara would keep the secrets away. With a tightened resolution, Sara would keep the lockbox key unused in its dresser drawer. She closed the drawer and turned away. Sara retired to her bedroom for the night, satisfied she could control her curiosity, satisfied even though Rhonda had been right about Jasmine, she had been wrong about Donaldson. Some things were best left unearthed.